Hello and welcome to Qsports. I am Umudu Gajaga. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a special edition of Qsports, and the disappointment in Gambian football continues as the Scorpions fail to sting again against the Palancas Negras of Angola in the return leg of the preliminary qualifiers of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022, which was played in Luanda. We watched the game earlier and there were so many highlights. At some point, in fact, the Gambia looked like they were going to get back into the tie. But guess what? Just 2 minutes later, Angola, through Fabio Brau, scored and he got Angola the winner. Lots of talking points, like we said earlier. And first, we would start in Banjul. I have my panelists with me in the studio, Babukar C, and also Ade Darame, who is head of news at QTV and was one time a sports journalist. So I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. First of all, hello and welcome, gentlemen. Babukar C, let me start with you first.
Thank you very much, Mudu Gajaga. It's a pleasure having me on the Qsports to talk about what is ours this time. We're not talking about the Premier League or the La Liga, but rather our own Scorpions. Earlier we were discussing about the name. We will come to that later. But very disappointing as a Gambian and as a fan of the Scorpions. Still the counting continues. When and where and how is the Gambia going to qualify to its first Premier edition of African Cup of Nations?
Africa Cup of Nations. This time we're talking about the World Cup. It's just preliminary stages. Yeah. A lot of smaller nations in African football, if you like. The Malawis, the Rwandas, and the Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, are all through into the group phase of the FIFA World Cup qualifier. Gambia, huge disappointment against Angola this evening. You must have watched the game. How do you rate the Gambian team?
I watched the game and I sit here with a heavy heart, I have to say. Disappointing performance mainly, but funnily enough, in patches, a better performance than we saw here in Banjul. In the second half, as you rightly said, we scored and it looks like our hopes were about to be raised, only for them to be dashed. And really, really disappointing because they didn't press, they didn't push enough, and they didn't actually have enough shots on goal to turn the tie in our favour. Very disappointing, and lots of questions to be answered about tactics, about personnel, about recruitment policies. Nothing short of a root and branch reform of Gambian football, I think, will make us turn the situation around. You mentioned all the smaller nations. We can't keep using the fact that we're a small nation anymore, because as the ones you've mentioned have shown, you can be small and you can still get through. And AFCON recently, Madagascar, showed us what a small nation can do
at the biggest stage.
On the biggest stage. And not that long ago, 2.5 years ago, as you rightly know, and I know I keep going on about Cape Verde, but for 6 months, Cape Verde were the top ranked FIFA nation in Africa. Not in the West African region, in the whole of Africa. Above Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, all of them. A nation of 880,000. If they can do it, what's our excuse?
So many excuses for the Gambia until today. Is it the players? Is it the coach? Is it the Football Federation? We have a whole lot on our table to talk about. Babukar C, you were at the Independence Stadium to watch the first leg. I understand in football, home advantage would count a lot, especially in modern football. Gambia have all what it takes to win against Angola in the first leg, but they sat deep, allowed the Angolans to come on them, especially for the first half. They conceded. In the second half, it was a completely different game altogether when they attacked. They had so many chances. Did we fail at home?
In my concluding remarks during my opening, I said the counting continues as to when we are going to qualify to the AFCON. I didn't even talk about the World Cup because we're going to wait for 2026. So you know that's far from it. I'm not even talking about it. The reason why I said AFCON because we have Djibouti next month in a double-legged affair. As you rightly mentioned, the World Cup qualifier against Angola all went wrong at home. These are games. Mind you, we were playing the preliminaries, not even the qualifier proper. Yeah. The preliminaries are made for teams that are lowly ranked in Africa or in the continent to go play each other, and the better ones will be put together with the good ones, the good ranked ones,
Yes.
so that the qualifier proper can start. So let's say these are, I don't want to use another word to describe the Gambia or, or the team participating in the preliminaries, but these are teams that have not really, caught the eye of, those in charge of football. So you say, you know what, we can have you all in the qualifier. So you definitely have to group you aside.
In fact, it would be unfair to the bigger nations, the Senegals and
exactly.
Nigeria,
so
South Africa.
In order to make it through to the qualifier proper, make good use of your home advantage, which is attack, capitalize on your chances, score, and then when you go on an away leg, anything that you get there is a gamble, is a God gift. People, teams go away for draws. They go away for the win is the last option. If they get it, it's an almighty
it's a
bonus.
bonus.
But you go there to draw, and then if you lose, make so the home margin that you win, it's bigger than what you lose in away, and that's how teams qualify. And I think even school-going children know that. If you definitely want to go to the next stage, in a home and away tie, win your home game. But unfortunately, what we saw in Bakau was 7 defensive players playing, and how many strikers?
And today I was just going to come in here, because the coach made 4 changes to his starting 11 that played at the Independence Stadium in Bakau against the Angolans in the first leg. And today he had to be forced to play an attacking formation, which nearly worked at some point. Whenever the Gambia had the ball, they surge forward. They either create an opportunity through a free kick, or maybe they get close to goal. So those instances, you have the players who can do that kind of a job for you, and you fail to utilize that in the first leg.
It's the coach, I think, employed the tactics of fear of losing. He kept saying nonsensical things like, if we went out on all attack, they could counter-attack and score against us. Well, guess what? There's a saying that if you don't enter a lottery, you can't win. You have to go for goals.
Go for goal.
When you're at home, that is not the chance to kind of sit back and play for a draw and then hope you go over there and get a win or a draw to get you through. Use your home advantage. Having said that, I mean, looking at Angola, I was going to say the stadium was 10% full. It's more likely to say it was 90% empty. So I don't know whether it was complacency on the part of their fans, but they certainly did not turn out in numbers that would actually warrant them sort of turning up to say, let's cheer the boys home. Because they just, the stadium was empty. But as you rightly say, 4 changes, they seemed to almost work, almost do the trick that had we pushed and pushed, it could have happened. And then it's the usual thing in football. Once you've scored, do not let your concentration lapse. It was 2 minutes and 20 seconds after we scored that they then got what proved to be the decisive goal, really, in turning it around or kind of deflating our hopes, because that really was a kind of a kick in the guts that we were celebrating in the office, jumping up and down saying, yes, we're back in it. We're back in it. 1 more goal and we're through. Only for that to be punctured just a few minutes later. So the 4 changes certainly seem to almost have worked, but you're then left with a frustrating feeling of what if? What if we'd played an attacking formation at home, just gone at them? We as fans probably would have applauded the coach if he'd attacked and we'd lost even at home. But to sit back and then lose, that's unforgivable.
In fact, for me, I would call it an insult. If you look at the Gambian team again, I think defensively, they probably a little bit improved when you look at the side that they played against. But the bigger stage in this game, I think Angola controlled ball possession better. And Gambia, for much of the game, were playing the long balls. And in that long balls, they lose a lot of possession, especially in midfield. That is quite worrying. These days, you start play from behind. That's with your defenders, from the goalkeeper to the defense, and then the midfield to the strikers. You can't have this long ball, every other time, and then you make best use of it.
I mean, the stupidity of the long ball game when you're playing in hot conditions just means your players get tired. Because you and I, we've all played football, and there's nothing more frustrating than somebody knocking a long ball and you don't get it. After a while, you become deflated. You think, oh my God, yet another long ball, I didn't get to it, and so on. It's not the way. We've got skillful players. We can play to feet, and we didn't do that enough, and we didn't move the ball quickly enough. Let the ball do the work, is what they say. It shouldn't be people running. It should be the ball that should be moving at speed and to feet. But we didn't do that, and I think that was a great shame, because you had lots of skillful players who really didn't get a chance to shine.
Our national team's name is the Scorpions. The Scorpions that would not sting. The last time they sting, when was this? Was against Benin, and they should have stinged against Togo, but they failed to sting at home. Instead, the Togolese won that encounter, which resultingly gave Benin the opportunity to get into the Africa Cup of Nations. Should we suggest a name change for the Scorpions? Maybe a crocodile, maybe a hippopotamus, or maybe a lion, that sort of thing. Because the Scorpions is too small. One would have thought that the venom, when it stings, can even kill.
Well, unfortunately, we can't use the lions, because our neighbors are the lions.
Lions, Senegal. Why not? We can.
But the issue of the crocodile, as you rightly mentioned, you go to Kachikali, you have them. You go to other pools, you have crocodiles there. So I just don't know how the name Scorpions came about, but it's a big question mark, honestly. And I think that's a good idea, thinking about changing the name, to a more aggressive animal, or
looking for good luck, at least a fortune somewhere.
Exactly, as Mr. Adi rightly put it, the sharks, and then you have in Cape Verde, and then you saw all what they did in Africa. For quite a while, they've been leading Africa's table, as the best ranked team in Africa, and these are shark is powerful in the water, So honestly, it's the scorpions that we have. Maybe it's the scorpions that we have in the country that are stingless, but it's not really since independence, And now we are the only country in West Africa that is yet to test, the highest level of football at senior level.
At continental.
At the continental level.
At senior level. So honestly, changing the name, and again, another part of the coin is the kind of players that we import to play for us at national level. Hence, we said our league is not even semi-professional. We want to rely on players that are playing outside the Gambia. But again, the type of players that we invite. I remember the first press conference of the coach, Mr. Sanfeit, who said he's going to invite players, that based on merit.
Merit, yeah.
Based on merit. And now looking into what is happening with our national team, I don't think definitely he is practicing what he said from his press conference.
When you talk about a certain player, Ibrahim Osahna, who plays in the midfield, he has been in the squad for a very long time, since the 2010 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers and World Cup qualifiers, which were joined together. Under Paul Put, he has been in the national team, and he still, of course, plays his part in the team. His performance has been below par. His passes, he lost a lot of ball. It seems also at some point he runs out of energy.
He ran out of gas.
So when you have that sort of a player in your midfield, that's quite worrying.
Well, I heard one of his interview where he said, he is just here to help the younger ones. Whenever he is needed, he's available for the nation. So I like those kind of players that will give out everything, for your nation. And as you rightly mentioned, he's been there. You said in 2010, but I will say back in 2004.
Oh, yeah.
To Peru 2005, and then the list goes on. I remember. So these are players that are really ready to give their all, even if they're limping. But again, you as the coach, as experienced as you call yourself, if you're given a whole nation to lead, know the players that can give you 90 minutes, the players that can motivate you. There are players that even don't need to come into the pitch, but can give you the additional work needed as the 12th player to motivate the boys inside the dressing room. So players like Ibrahim Osahna, have all it takes to motivate the younger ones coming. He has gone through it all, the rough ones, the nice ones, from 2005 to date, But do you need to give him 90 minutes, especially now that he's without a club? That's a big question. There are players that you have invited in the club, not only Ibrahim, that have not played active football for God knows when. There are players also that are in our national team who are playing third division football in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Are they the type of players that you want to play against, players that are playing in the top leagues in Africa and Europe? So this is where, we should definitely look into things. Tom said he is only going to
And is it about the quality of the players or where they play? Because 85% or 75% of this Angolan team play, some of them play in the Angolan league, especially one of their top teams,
which is a
Premier
professional
Agosto,
which is
a professional league. So I think sometimes it doesn't matter where you play, but if you play in a high quality league, that's where the coach would measure his yard when it comes to selecting the players.
It certainly matters. I mean, if you look at Palancas Negras, you have players who play in Portugal, in Spain, in Italy, in the top divisions. You have players who play for Al Ahly in Egypt. where have we got those players of that caliber in the Gambian team? And I think what Babakar C has said is something that we need to look at. There needs to be a more aggressive policy of recruiting players who have Gambian heritage. Without that, I think we will always struggle, because we're reaching into a smaller and smaller pool from which to draw players to represent the team. You have players who, yes, they will give their all, but they might be past it. It's not being nasty to them. But you need players who are fresh, who are young, who are playing at a certain level, and we need to really go out to look for people. That's what other countries do. Just before I came down here, we were discussing this in the studio, and people were saying, oh, you know, perhaps in these other countries the players all play in their home country. Well, of course, you and I know that about 6 or 7 of the Angolan squad play in Angola. The rest of them are out. But if you take the last World Cup, the Brazil team, only 1 player played in Brazil. The rest of them play. I know we're not going to compare ourselves to Brazil.
Brazil, yeah.
But it's a fact that Brazil has been lucky to have good enough players who play at the top level all around the world. And we need to be scouring players. And one of the things that I once got into trouble with my BBC colleagues for this is that we need to be a bit more aggressive as African nations in countering the bigger nations who steal our players.
Yeah.
We were discussing not long ago the 16-year-old boy who made his debut for
Barcelona, yeah.
He was born in Guinea-Bissau. He was there till he was 7 years old, and now Spain want to claim him. To play for the Spanish national team. In England, you have Chalobah, born, raised in Sierra Leone. He lived there till he was 12 years old before he went to England. He's a full England international. Honestly, we should oppose that kind of thing. England is a population of 60+ million. Do you really need to steal Sierra Leonean players? No. And and this happens with Gambia. It happens with other smaller nations, and we don't make enough of a noise about it. And also, one has to be honest. Sometimes when you hear about players from Nigeria and Ghana fighting for bonuses that they've been promised, always on the eve of the first game of a big tournament. It shows you that the countries do not respect the players, and who wants to put up with that? So that's something that has to change as well.
Definitely, I would agree with you. There have been instances where Gambia tries to convince players who are born to Gambian parents in Europe. Obviously, they were born in parts of Europe, but to Gambian parents, and they have all the qualifications to play for the Gambia. But on the other side, when you look at how you were treated when you come to play for the Gambia national team, the struggles that you face at the time, maybe a lot must have improved by now, but it's also very difficult, because otherwise you go to countries like Senegal, some of their players who play in the national team, some of them were born in France, but they were able to convince them. Algeria, for instance, especially the North African
I was just going to
Morocco.
Say, Algeria, that's the team that won the AFCON.
Yes.
7 of their players were born in France. So in the squad, not in the starting 11. But 7. That's a healthy number. Are you telling me there aren't people with Gambian heritage in all these other countries where they're working there? We need to look for them, and we need to find them, and we need to tempt them with the right sort of offer to play for the country of their parents' origin.
Lots of talking points now. Djibouti is up next month. Is the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers preliminary stage as well. We've lost this one, the World Cup. Is Djibouti ready to come over here in Banjul and suck us again? Because we've been in this so many times. I could remember in 2015 it was Namibia who came to Banjul, and then we drew 1-1, and the return leg in Namibia, we lost to them by 2-1. So these things are not quite new. We just need to devise a mechanism to be able to put it to bed with a better performance. And with Djibouti, I think there is going to be a lot that the public is going to demand from the Gambia's national team, especially if it is going to be under coach Tom Saintfiet.
Talking about the coach Tom Saintfiet, first of all, I think the approach towards game preparation have changed towards the positive end. I remember years ago when players will play and then be struggling to get their $15,000 a bonus. You know, some of them will go home and say, you know what, give it to my family. I don't have time. I'm going for my club services. That has changed now, honestly, and I think that's a good improvement. On the side of the player selection, I think still, if the coach did not change his approach towards games, I wouldn't be surprised if Djibouti sucked us. You know, I mean, he's so defensive-minded. Honestly, even, you know, I'm not a tactician, but, you know, it's very easy to spot out that. You know, the first game we played here against Angola, he played 7 defensive-minded players. You know, how can you win that at a home game? We are traveling first to Djibouti. You know, I hope we will attack as we did today. The kind of fixture that he put today against Angola in Luanda, we want to see that kind of football. I don't mind you going away defend, but home, attack the entire 90 minutes. Get us the fit players. You know, and he's not respecting the words that he told us from the first press conference. I'm going to select players based on merit. Get us players who are fully fit and are playing week in, week out in their clubs, not players without clubs. Get us the best players. We still lack 3, 4 to 5 players that are top notch right now in their clubs. But you want to follow your ego to say, I heard him the last time saying, I will not beg a player to come and play for a country. No one should beg anybody to come and play for a country. No person is bigger than a country. But again, you know, right now, not even with I don't even want to talk about that one, you know, because to me it's just rubbish. You cannot say journalists have a special agenda against you. The agenda is one thing, to see the Gambia qualify to its first ever World Cup or African Cup. That's the agenda we have. If you put in a wrong fixture, we will criticize you. If you don't want it, resign and leave the country. We are paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. But what I want to say is there are certain players that I think it's high time that they put their house in order, talk to these players, let them bear everything that is there, you know, differentiating them to make sure they come to the national team. I don't want to talk about Steve, about Hamza Barry and stuff. You know, he went and sold the idea to the entire nation that he called them, they refused to pick his call, you know, he's not going to invite them again. But it didn't happen that way. You and I know it didn't happen that way. His first press conference in the Gambia, you know, he really diminished that boy playing in China, saying what is Chinese league. And I remember that same year is when players from China came and represented their countries at the World Cup.
One of them is Igalo
and others.
Yeah, and he's been scoring for
so
Nigeria.
So he really, brainwashed that boy, you know, calling him names, says he has played for the national team 5 times without scoring. Why will he invite him? How did he know that? That was his first press conference after just taking over the Gambia's job. So there's something going on that needs to be settled with this national team. We have the brightest players that are not playing for the country. They have to come. And it will be the biggest insult ever if we should struggle to qualify against Djibouti. So there's a lot of, you know, things that need to be settled as far as the national team is concerned. The coach's approach and tactics is very wrong, you know, and we have to say it loud and clear. If we want to win games, put up the right structure, put up the right players in the field, and let us attack our home games to make sure we win. Whatever we get away, it's a bonus.
Whatever we get away, it's a bonus. Mr. Adedrame, when you are in the position to give some of the best players that your country has to play abroad, maybe for foreign clubs, do you negotiate with them if there is any feud or if there is any sort of problems between the Gambia national team coach and the players? Do you try to negotiate them, or you try to go in for the players no matter what happens, or you just let it go?
No, I mean, this is a conversation you and I had even before the first game against Angola. And I said I couldn't fathom why people from the GFF had not gotten the two sides together, the players and the coach, and say, look, we're not Brazil, Spain, Portugal or whomever, where we have this huge pool of players to call from, that we can actually eliminate 3 or 4 or 5 very good players and say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's not going to, it will impact upon it. And I can't believe why they didn't bring them together to bury the hatchet and say, look, you know, let's talk frankly about what the problem is between the two sides, and then say, you know what, it doesn't matter. You could work in an office where you hate somebody's guts. Well, guess what? You're both working for the same organization with the same goals. That should be the same in football. You don't have to like the players, but if they're your best players or they are amongst your best, you pick them once you've buried the differences about whatever may have happened or whatever somebody might have said in your ear that might have influenced it. Because as you rightly say, Babuka, it might be that somebody said something to him and he's taken that, and you know, we're in this conundrum we are. And you know, the one kind of optimistic. I like to be an optimist. Is that I can't believe that he's going to make the same mistake against Djibouti as he did against Angola. In other words, not attack when he should attack, and then come, and then in the return leg, sort of, even if they're sort of winning already or leading from the first leg, say, okay, we'll just defend and hold. That, if he does that, he should be sacked immediately after the game. So, there's this optimistic part of me that says he's not going to do that, and he's not going to treat Djibouti lightly, but he's going to use the bitter lesson that he's learned from this one, where he must be saying to himself, if I'd played and chosen the team that I chose today in Angola, we would have gone through.
There you go. So, Coach Tom Samfie, you've been given the opportunity to get on there against Djibouti and do the job. And it's next month. It's not a long way off. We're looking forward to that big encounter. But it has been a disappointing night of football between the Gambia and the Pelencas Negras of Angola, as they lost 2-1 in the World Cup preliminary qualifiers. 3-1 on aggregate, and Angola are through. Gambia are out until the 2026 World Cup qualifier. But for the Africa Cup of Nations against Djibouti, that's up next month. Thank you very much for watching this special edition of Q Sports. And until we come your way, keep on sporting, and bye for now.